So, Paola, Bertola, you didn't know her, of course, because it's part of the ekip project. So she's design professor and vice director at Politecnico and scholar of design innovation, PhD in classical design, multimedia communication, and of course, you had also a research experience at the Illinois Institute of Technology. So you guys, you have a huge curricula, so I won't want to mention everything. Then you, if you want, you can add stuff. Paolo Ferrarini is is a friend, is a wonderful person, but he happens also to be a professor at Accademia Costume Moda, University of Bologna. He's an expert in cultural innovation. He's a writer for Cool Hunting magazine, one of the leading lifestyle and trend-related magazine in the world. And he's been into scientific committees in Milan Design Week and also Accademia Costume Moda. And Elena Marinoni, I don't know if you can see us, Elena. Ciao, Elena. Elena, she's a trend forecaster and a strategic consultant with more than 20 years of experience. And she's the former director of education of Istituto Marangoni in Dubai. She was actually the founder of the Istituto Marangoni Dubai. She launched it. It's an incredible success. Now she's moving back to Europe, and Elena happens to be also part of the team of Nextatlas since I think now more than 10 years. So.
Thank you, Luca. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Luigi, probably we can switch to Elena. You are huge on the screen, so you.
I'm so sorry.
So we are talking about again AI, but in this case it would be in the context of fashion education. And again, we are not talking really about distant futures. We're talking about something that is already happening. We talked a lot among ourselves. And yeah, so my first question is probably for you guys here, and then Elena next. So what is actually happening? What are we really now in this moment? Paola, can you start on that? So, yeah.
Okay, so what's happening in our context, which is education in this field of creative industries and especially fashion. It is happening that these technologies, in fact, are already embedded in our daily teaching, mostly in our daily learning, and this is the key aspect. When ChatGPT came, what happened was that the GPTs was not only the generative pre-trained transformers, so the meaning was not just that, but it was also general purpose technology. That means that it was a technology able to impact all different fields, not all, but in the case of AI, many fields of our economies, societies, and this happened throughout the history. For example, steam machine was a general purpose technology, but there's a huge difference between those type of general purpose technology and what we have now, because you couldn't buy at the time a steam machine and play with it in your house. Now what happened with this type of AI application is that our students can perfectly access those without us having thought anything about their potential use, how to use them. They even, in the very beginning, used those without us knowing they were using. So the difference is that this type of technology have a broad accessibility, and the students started to use them even before we thought about how to regulate and implement them into teaching and learning. Was just the debate before us. So technologies were accelerating in a way that regulators, and in our case, teaching and learning planners, were not ready to to think about how to use them. So this is the state of the art. But what last point about general purpose technology, the type of evolution is the same. So they have actually in the very beginning of their introduction constraints because they are conceived in a generalistic way in the very beginning. So there is still, and this still now, a lot of lacks in those technology in their domain application. So those technologies are not ready to be effectively applied and used in many domains, and I can speak for fashion. They are not ready and effective in fashion. So what is happening is that students are even or becoming frustrated because the technology is not ready to produce what they want to produce, or they are driven by technology producing things that they do not control anymore in terms of quality. So I think that we are across the stage. Luckily, in the last years, we are, as educators, starting to embed technologies in teaching and learning in a more formal way and understanding better how the students can use them.
Yes, absolutely. First of all, hello everyone. Thank you for inviting me. It was a very, very nice occasion also to make lists of things that we're doing with AI. Some of them consciously, some of them not really consciously, but still we're doing that. So, thinking about my work as a teacher in class, because you have several roles at the university and at Accademia Costume Moda, but as a teacher, I want to start just on the relationship with the students, which I think is always the most important of things. I made a list of the things that we do and make using AI, and the students do and make using AI. One of the most important, one of the most relevant things that students do in fashion schools now, from what I see, is, for example, the visualization of ideas. That is something that is much, much faster than it used to be. You have an idea, you prompt whichever AI tool you have, and you visualize an idea. Even
you mean they are empowered with technology to do that, so they
absolutely. What they cannot express maybe in words, and also in drawings, because let's not forget that not all fashion students can draw. Because it used to be a fundamental skill to be a good fashion designer, right? Now, it's not that necessary anymore. They can transform also reality, maybe transform a picture and, let's say, in a location, imagine the fashion show for your collection, and the collection is not yet being defined, so it's a way to see the future, in a way, not just imagine that, but also to see the future. Virtual fittings, for example, this is also something that they do. And I'm just talking about fashion design students, and there's also the students that are fashion communication and fashion management, that also the tools that are more, I guess, predictable for this kind of thing. So in presentations, summarizing texts, creating texts, this is something that we do. When there was a moment, a couple of years ago, when I realized that many of the students were, exactly like Paola said, extensively using AI without declaring it. They were like sneaky, and I mean, I started to notice that the level of quality of the essay, the language in the essays was skyrocketing. Everybody was perfectly fluent in English, everybody was perfectly fluent in Italian, no more typos, no more, and I said, okay, I don't ask them not to use AI, but I ask them to declare the use of AI. And we use it also in class. This is also another application. For example, very short exercises, small exercises that we do with fashion communication students. For example, there's an exhibition, let's write a post for Instagram for a magazine. Okay? First, we write it. I let them write it themselves without any use of any online sources whatsoever, just using what they know, what they learn about that. So they write this post, and then we prompt ChatGPT exactly with the same things that I told the students to do. and we compare the results. Thank God, so far, 90% of the time, the result is maybe more streamlined, the result of AI, but has much less taste than what comes from the student. So, long story short, we're starting to use it now spontaneously. It's not yet structured in the teaching methods of the school, but we're starting to experiment and see our reaction, the students' reaction, but we're not trying to take it off the education process.
Elena, can you hear us?
Yeah.
You started, I think, Istituto Marangoni in Dubai, was it like 2021?
2022.
So exactly when launched, the ChatGPT launched.
Yeah, in fact, and in Marangoni, Milano in 2007, so, and then again in Politecnico, Milano, so in this sense as an educator, I had the chance to witness over the past years the penetration of this set of technologies, and I do agree with Paola that we are still in an early stage, yet accelerating with AI being more and more present and enthusiastically discussed. However, I don't see it, how can I say, deeply integrated into the entire value chain of fashion education. Paolo covered with some examples the applications that students typically do, whereas from the tutors side, I also see AI being used, of course, behind the scenes for class preparation, for content refinement, but also for course file reporting activities as a way to, let's say, simplify or streamline some administrative tasks, especially when it comes to QA frameworks. However, I see from the tutor's point of view that the assessment, evaluation, and verification is where AI is most visible, through, of course, the use of anti-plagiarism softwares. But I do see a huge potential. The more we leverage the power of AI, the more we might have the chance to understand in advance, for instance, the students that are struggling. We can, for instance, understand in advance the specific learning curve of the student, and we can then intervene in a timely way in case this student, for instance, is again struggling. So the potential here I see is quite significant as we move forward, since we can more and more creative, adaptive learning pathways based on analytics. But we do have also some frictions, of course, as we know. Sometimes higher education institutions are not yet fully ready from the technical point of view, and sometimes also from the philosophical point of view, if you allow me. And sometimes also faculties are sometimes not equipped or not so familiar, so there is empty room in this empty space in this sense. And finally, at least this is what I witnessed in Dubai, there is also a policy lag, meaning that accreditation bodies and QA frameworks have not yet fully caught up with the advent of AI.
Thank you, Anne. So there's an interesting point all of you were basically highlighting, so that it might be inclusive already. For instance, I'm thinking about language and and knowledge of the language. So if you're not like a mother tongue speaker in English, that helps. So I feel helped by AI when I can revise my text and make it feel like it's proper English. But then there's also grading and measuring the quality of the work that students do. And you have to be, so how this is changing, because how do you, and by the way, and this is domain specific, so it's almost, fashion is something that in which, there are, things about something that is tasteful or the style, something that's more like also judging not just the practicality of it or how you make it good and but what is a good design, for instance. And then how can you envision like this way of differentiating between the AI contribution and the student contribution and be somehow fair in that? So this is, I think it's of course a generic problem in education, but you go first, okay?
Well, when we grade, let's say, or judge the work of our students, taste is never in the mix. Okay? Because what we evaluate is the progress, is the quality of the work, is the technical skills, if we consider fashion design, right? So the taste, if a teacher likes or not what the student is doing, is absolutely not relevant. So the taste is always something that is very, very personal, and we are always very, very strict on that end. Of course, we're humans, there might be exceptions, but still, this is not part of the evaluation. Of course, when it comes to fashion communication, fashion management, art direction, there it's more like considering, again, processes and goals and the quality of the essay, of the presentation, and so on and so forth. So it is more rigorous, more scientific, numerical aspects. Of course, AI can be very, very important. Once I made an experiment, I received a series from a class I didn't personally like, but that's a side thing. I realized that almost 80% of the students, they made highly AI-generated works for the final. So I started to also evaluate them using AI, simply dragging the PDFs onto ChatGPT, giving the assessment criteria that I gave the students, and see the results. Of course, I didn't give back the students just an AI-generated evaluation because I read all of them anyway. But I was seeing the level of quality and, I have to say, unbiased approach of AI towards the evaluation of the students, the evaluation of the work of the students. Recently, I was also reading an article from the New Yorker when there was this teacher that was saying that he uses a lot AI to tutor the students. It gives the students the chance to be tutored by AI. And the response was very positive because many of the students, they say, I like the answers of AI better than the answers of teachers because I don't feel judged. And that is wonderfully scary at the same time.
Apparently that is also in the medical field where patients feel better treated by AI.
Exactly. So if it's a tool, going back to your question, if it is a tool that can support, not substitute, but support the work of teachers, I think we can find extremely creative ways. Also adapting, as Elena was saying, adapting also to the needs of the students. We can find a very creative way also of giving feedback. Okay? Of course, the human factor should always be there. But this could be,
would this point to like a different infrastructure evaluation, so that grading at a certain point would be meaningless, where you cannot distinguish between AI contribution and or at least you have to focus on very different part of the skills that you are. So execution, for instance, couldn't go in the mix in some cases because the execution is done by AI. What you can ask?
Well, I think that the question could be exactly the same before AI related to any type of tools that we've been implementing in didactics since now, because then the problem was how much of this board depends on the skills of Photoshop and how much it depends on the skill of the students. So a major part of this question relates to the role of technology in terms of augmenting human potential. Then going to grading, there's an additional aspect which Paolo was also underlying, that very much of the grading, which is one of the toughest tasks of professors, relates not to the outcomes, but to the process, especially in disciplines as the ones that we teach, where we are immersed in a teaching-learning process, which is a dual relationship which spans for a semester, where you are transferring contents, but also interacting with the students, working with them on hands-on activities, designing together and testing their learning process. So there's also a part of the grading, of the evaluation of what they are doing, which takes into account the process and their improvement. So how do you grade them? Finally, you grade upon, of course, the quality of the outcomes and the quality of the process and the quality of the advancements that has been done. In terms of perspective, we can imagine a future where AI would substitute all creatives, but is most possibly, to me, a future where the one that will have a creative job will be the one much more able and experts in using well the tool, so that the perspective, and also in terms of approach, of course, I think for any good institution, pedagogies come before tools. And in terms of pedagogies, for us, the goal is clear, is written in our ethical codes. The perspective is creating a paradigm where technologies and tools are augmenting human potential. So it is a collaborative paradigm for us. I go back to the discussion earlier of the previous panel. In this sense, we can be purpose-driven in terms of teaching. We want to create and to transfer to our students a paradigm where they need to excel in using the tool, to be the best out there, to use the tool, taking the most advantage of what they can offer in terms of human being collaborating with the technology. So I think that in that perspective, yes, grading is still very much difficult, but I don't think that the real clue is AI, what is done by AI or what is done by students.
Irina, do you want to add something?
Well, I believe that the process is the point at issue and not the final summative creative output of the process. And so in this sense, as educators, we can rework and modify the assessment strategies in order to have multiple assignments breaking down each and every skill or competence and so on. So as a consequence, we are going to evaluate the progress, the process, and not only the final output. And this also would be another value from the student's perspective, because it reduces the level of, let's say, the stress of the students. So the more we break down, the more we can teach students different tools, and the more they can improve their capability to use the right tool in the right context. So in this sense, it also entails much more work for educators, to be honest with you, because if you have one final output, okay, that's it, one shot, but if you have an assessment strategy that is very articulated, it entails necessarily a lot of work. But from the learning perspective, I think it's definitely way more beneficial for students.
Yeah, and we had like, I don't know if you can show Luigi and then cover it for a bit. We had stats on the rise of dimensions of practical skills. It's interesting because it points again to another kind of challenge. So in some ways, we want to reclaim that. We want to go back to good drawing. You were saying students are not really able sometimes to even draw silhouettes, for instance. And we want to have them learn the all good practical skill. We discussed yesterday with Rasa this point for illustrators, no? And we said, okay. But then there are, of course, machines that are executing those things much better, and I think there's the idea that we don't know exactly what to teach. So what I'm saying is that you want to have like a resilience strategy in education in which you teach people the good old skills because you think these are valuable. This is heritage. This is something that makes you like a better human in a sense. But also the market is pushing for something different. And you don't really need that skill because it's outdated in terms of execution, timing, and quality because machines are doing that better. So I guess my question is how we can resolve this puzzle because it's really something that we have to choose. So how we can balance that?
I think that one of the ways by which we can find a solution to that is giving options. I mean, we've seen, for example, at Accademia Costume Moda, we've seen the rise of requests both from companies that will hire our students and from the students. The request for very, very hands-on activities. For example, masters in knitwear design. When you knit, actually, I've seen there's someone knitting that made me very, very happy. So they actually knit, they also build their looms. So not just knit, but build their loom. And then maybe the presentation of their work is done using AI. I don't see a contradiction here. I see, for example, when I go to school, the students, apart from the teaching hours and the learning hours, they have full access to the laboratories of the school. You can go every day and it's open until 7 p.m. You will always find students cutting and sewing and designing patterns, always, all the time. So very, very hands-on. Okay. And maybe they study just on e-books. They don't even go to the library anymore, and they select their reading their articles and so on using ChatGPT. Okay, so it's already part of what is happening, these sort of ups and downs. And I mean, being very abstract, very digital, but at the same time extremely concrete. I think I'm not saying anything new, but I can confirm from what I see. I'm also following very, very, with a lot of attention recently, the development of this American school. It's called Alpha School. It's a very, very interesting experiment. Now there's 2 campuses. They say the AI school. They have this form of teaching that is highly integrated with AI. For example, the students, they start from primary school. The students, they have like only 2 hours per day of traditional academic studies. these contents of their academic studies are decided by an AI. Okay? They study 25 minutes and never break, 25 minutes and never break. They constantly have, like it's like a video game, they have this club, of course everything is made online. They have these meters that tell them in real time about their progress. It's literally like a video game. Okay? And so they can do that. In the afternoon, they only do collaborative work.
Without digital.
Without digital, they can develop an enterprise or they can apply their skills. They go and do site visits, they go to museums and stuff. So they have a very, very hardcore digital boarding and a very, very active, engaging afternoon. There are some things, I mean, it's very common, but they invite you to search for Alpha School and see what they're doing. I think it's very, very interesting because some things seem totally dystopian also if you watch the movies of what they're doing, but some of the things I think we should learn from because it's a very, very interesting way of integrating real interaction. The only thing I really don't like is that they don't call the teachers anymore, but they call them guides. Like Boy Scouts, guides. I'm not sure I like it. What a guide, but
so that's a very important questions, and again, we need not to be nostalgic and to know that some skills and some activities will be at a certain point outdated, and we need to accustom to what is coming as new solutions. But there are also problems related to our cognitive processes, because these type of technologies are different from the pure mechanical technologies. They replicate, working in a different way, of course, our cognitive processes. And they have been pre-trained, in fact, using the results of our cognitive processes before. So they have been fed by the result of what we've been produced in terms of accumulation of knowledge. So what you were saying is given for granted that the way our cognitive process worked up to now, we need now to change it, and I'm explaining myself better. Actually, cognitive scientists have already demonstrated that you cannot split completely the intangible dimension of our cognitive processes with the tangible processes that are accompanying them. For example, drawing is not only a way of representing things. There are components of cognitive inside drawing. So while you are drawing, you understand things and you produce contents. I brought a little video, maybe later we can look at it. We're working a lot with Gianfranco Ferré archive, and he had this wonderful way of working, and he was compulsively drawing things to understand the perfect goal that he wanted to reach.
Can we show it? Because we
Sure,
will comment
absolutely.
maybe after. So
and we can say this for drawing, for example, but also for handwritings. There are tons of studies up to now that says that losing handwritings will reduce the potential of our cognitive process, will impoverish step by step what we are creating in terms of new knowledge. So there is a very deep reflection we need to do in terms of education on what we can consider outdated and what we need to still incorporate in didactics. And there are tangible processes that we need to still incorporate in that, because it's part of the cognitive process, the way of learning and the way of understanding.
I'm interested in a question. Then you want to add something now?
Yeah, just a quick thing to confirm what Paolo is saying. For example, something that I do is force my students to take notes by hand. Most of them.
No, sorry. I can comment it later.
Well, so for example, I force my students to handwrite while taking notes. First, I force them to take notes. I remember I ask them around every 30 minutes, are you taking notes? Are you taking notes? And I invite them to do that on their notebooks by hand. And then we use AI. But I completely agree with what Paola is saying. One other thing, with some of the classes, we have this exercise every year. They have to create their fashion manifesto. They have to think about their manifesto for what they intend to do in fashion in the next 10 years. So it's a big stretch. One of the exercises, which is a methodology developed by Terry Millman, is a series of questions they have to answer to. And I do that completely offline. So they have cards with questions and they have to answer this question like, how do you imagine your life in 10 years? What will be your job? How much money would you need? So very simple question, but the important ones. And they handwrite. The first year I did 2 hours of this exercise. The students begged me to add 2 more hours of that exercise. And so now I do 4 hours of that exercise. They're silent, they forget about their phones, and it's incredible how reactive they are to this thing that seems pretty outdated and old. I feel that they understand how rich these exercises because they're not used to them, so it's rare.
Yeah, I have a specific question on this and like a provocation. So, Elena, you want to add something on this practical skills / outdated skills and how you balance that in your experience, Marco?
The balance between the two is, of course, the best thing. Of course, I can imagine that more and more fashion schools will have keep their analog spaces, let's say, very hands-on and tech-free and so on, and at the same time using more and more AI. So I'm in favor of course, the combination of the two things, because both skills are needed, and also the capability to choose and to decide in a critical and aware way when to use what.
My question and the provocation. A friend of mine is known philosopher, better known than us, is Roberto Casati. He published a book, was called Against Digital Colonialism some years ago. And he has this interesting idea about education. He said, okay, don't look at the school as something that is retro in terms of lagging behind tech trends, tech fads, whatever, but is actually designed to be atemporal. So that if the model of school, and this is actually again related to the things we were saying yesterday on the, let's say, senior skills, school should be focused in when technological change is so fast, just on high-level skills that are completely unrelated with the world outside, basically. So having like total insulation from tech change, and this is because it goes back to what you're saying. So that some things we are not learning because we are in a market and they want to be illustrators, but we use drawing because our cognitive, let's say, apparatus needs that to build itself. So it's about learning to learn, right? So it's like metacognition, and so that we are probably this is Casati's idea. So posing the wrong question, so we don't need to adapt the school. School, whenever you have like a node computer at school, this is good. Or whenever you're using the Blackboard, this is good, because this really shields you from whatever is outside and make you like a better human in some sense. So I don't know, is it something that you, if you had to like to do the reform of your own institution?
I'm not sure that I agree. Because I think that school shouldn't be a parallel reality, parallel universe, but should be an alternative world in a way. So it should be a window, should be like a space where you see the world in a different way, but you need to see the world. You shouldn't be like outside of the world. Again, an example, some of my students, they contest, they say, okay, well, I don't want to take notes in handwriting because then my notes are messed up. I like to type on my computer, so everything is perfect, is in order. And I tell them, okay, take notes, your note and pencil, choose the best paper that you have, choose the best pen that you can find, then take a picture and transform your notes into full text with AI. What's the problem? So it's a way of giving them, at least I give them two options in this way. As a result, maybe they will never touch a notebook and a pen anymore, and they will not touch paper anymore. Fine, as long as it's their choice.
But the point is, if we are getting dumber because we are losing the cognitive strategy to build our own intelligence, because this is the point. So if there are evidences from cognitive science that are saying, if you don't draw, you do not understand what you're looking at.
Yes, we need to give them options. We need to give them a menu about that relates to what the world will be and should be, and then they choose their own meal.
I don't want to give the impression that I'm all about drawing, and actually I disagree with the point of the book that you put us, because our perspective is more now supporting the students which already have this attitude to embrace a cyber-physical paradigm. They already have this attitude because they live in a cyber-physical reality. I do also. So being able to cognitively and seamlessly shift between the physical and the digital, not losing the physical dimension, also because it is impossible. We have body, we have a body, we have blood, so it's something that is taking out a part of our reality. So, said so, I don't think that school should go in that direction. Actually, in the evolution of universities, when the first scientific revolution happened, the first universities coming from in the Middle Age humanities started to work on science and created the scientific revolution. Then there was a second revolution for university that happened when the Politecnico was founded, but also MIT and all the technical schools around the world in the late 19th century, where this topic came out. So can university be completely aside the real application and the real world? And the answer in that moment was no. In fact, all these different institutions in Seoul were created with the idea of linking universities with the real world. What I think is the real challenge is really creating this model where there's an ecosystem of actors, where university play the role of anyway being linked to the freedomness and foundation-like approach that is needed, but at the same time there's a continuous dialogue with what the society needs, because the advancement also need to embrace the goals and needs of the society. So I think it's always, the answer is always less simple than we think, and it's really a challenge for educational institutions, because in especially moments like this, where the acceleration of the change is so high, it is the role of university to take responsibility, to think about anticipating what will come for the benefit of students, future professionals, and the society. So I think it's really challenging the time, but I would not say that we need to be aside from the technological development.
Elena, Dubai is already aside from everywhere. So it's a kind of floating
Yeah, in a
city.
certain way, yeah, you are right. In a certain way, Dubai, UAE, and in general, Middle East is becoming like a new center for like driven trends, but also for higher education, with so many big universities opening their branches here, recently also Sorbonne and so on. And well, I do believe that the fashion school of the future should become, how can I say, a space for calibration in a way, where students can learn in a safe environment, not only to experiment, but they can learn to decide, to ask, when does AI serve my vision? And when does like another technology or no technology at all will actually improve it and make it sharper? So I think that the capability to calibrate will be key more and more in the future, and the schools that will be able to offer this space for calibration will be able to offer customized and personalized learning paths that are adaptive, because this is the potential in AI, in my opinion, not just as a tool, but as a way to approach the learning experience of the students.
Yeah, I think we found the most enlightened teachers ever about technology here. So there's some kind of selection bias, probably. I wanted the contraria, someone who said, no, this is all dangerous. But but no, this is a very direct one. So what would you suggest to stop teach immediately, right, like tomorrow in your institutions? And what you would suggest to start teach immediately from day one tomorrow?
Well, I would not stop. I would add rather than.
You have to answer also stop. So.
No, I would stop with long hours. I would stop like 2 hours of the same subject. I would go for shorter, like a testing menu. Right? Shorter things, and then the students, they might choose to, exactly as Elena was saying, to have a personalized program with more of what you think is relevant from you. So something that is a more personalized program. So maybe I would add even more subjects, but shorter, and then some form of personalization.
You don't see like a subject is totally useless now.
No, there's nothing that is used, because the history of art, the history of fashion, history of costume, history of footwear, history of knitting, everything is so interesting. And sometimes you see the eyes of some students that light up for the things that you think are the most boring. So you cannot know that in advance. That's why I say we should give them more options, and then shorter, and then you go deeper. That could be something. Things that we need absolutely to teach is like practical skills, like handwriting, weaving, knitting, these kind of things. And one other thing, I don't know how we could teach that, but it's complexity. Because one of the things that AI is doing, and I find it very, very alarming, is the hyper-simplification of things. Everything is a summary. Everything is a bullet point. Everything is two takeaways. That's not reality. So we need to teach complexity. I don't know how, but we need that more than everything, I think.
I'm also in trouble because, what would you stop to teach? There's also an article of our constitution, which is the 33, that is about the freedom of teaching and researching. So,
you would be a dictator.
I would be a dictator, yes. there's certainly a reflection in terms of outdated knowledge, but it is really more about tools than about domains of knowledge. So certainly there are outdated tools, especially in the technological context, because the one related to the physicality of cognitive processes cannot be considered outdated. So certainly outdated tools. Certainly there is a general reflection in terms of how do we see the perimeters of disciplines to be shaped. So maybe that not stopping to teach something, but completely changing the way we are packing what we are teaching, because there is, we see it, a general convergence of knowledge that is related to the fact that the type of technology that we have is distributed, so cognitive sciences are going together with ICTs, biologies, with the artificial world, so this leads to reperimeter disciplinary areas, and for example, maybe that for teaching something, we will need tomorrow to have a designer and a philosopher together teaching that type of topic that now we are not yet, well, we know that we should do that, but then there are all the constraints of large institutions as we are, and large, I would say, normative approaches, the one we depend from, that are not giving us this freedomness. So I think that the most updated things is the way we are now combining the domains of knowledge to teach something. That is certainly completely updated.
Thank you, Paola. Elena?
Well, in a way, what Paolo and Paola said, the complexity and the multidisciplinary approach build a sense of systemic thinking. Being fashion such a multifaceted domain, the creative minds of the future will need to be able, for instance, to do a creative data set curation, but they also need to have a commercial eye, since AI is more and more used for product development and merchandising, for instance. So I see, let's say, room for improvement in the curricula in this sense towards systemic thinking, and also the idea that we should reward as educators the complexity, the uniqueness, the narrative over the super polished outcome, since AI is more and more enabling students to have perfectly curated renderings, and the visualization techniques now are mind-blowing. So we should, I think, emphasize more and more the process, the critical abilities, and the meaning, the narrative, the multi-layered meaning, rather than rewarding the polished and also safe creative output that maybe is perfect, however, probably is not, let's say, able to be memorized and to be considered something disruptive and that deserve to be discussed.
Okay, thank you, Elena. I think we have time just for a quick round of questions from you guys, if you have ones. Any contrarian? Vittorio, you are the contrarian by definition. Yeah.
I was wondering, what is your opinion about this experiment that the California State University is doing with ChatGPT, with OpenAI and AWS, giving ChatGPT to all the almost 500,000 students and 63,000 people working for the university. So they started in February, so nobody has some evidence of how it's going on, because that's very large. So it's probably the largest experiment of changing the way the university works using AI. And that's a vocational university, not a research university, so it's more interesting, I think.
Well, I guess large-scale adoptions of this tool, of course, then the US market is always more open, and they did it earlier, but I think that most of the universities are approaching large-scale adoption of tools. We did just a few months ago with ChatGPT Plus for both professors and students. Bocconi did the same. I think Politecnico did the same. So there is anyway a trend that is going towards a large adoption of these tools embedded into didactics and also learning. I think that going back to your discussion earlier, for what concern university, there is anyway a reflection in terms of being aware of the potential impacts and results more than we are right now. So it's a trial and error process that we are starting to see the impacts already. I think a key aspect, we are somehow lucky because we are a scientific technological university, is also to be able to transfer to colleagues and students what's behind the tool so that they can really interpret the way the tool works, which I need to understand that anyway, even if it produces result that looks like to be as the one produced by humans, so the result of creativity, for example, their process is different. So they work through a syntactic model and a statistic model, not through a semantic model. So the machine doesn't know anything about the meaning of what it produces. This is very important for the students and the professor to know, because this creates, of course, an awareness of a critical thinking about it. So I think that this is key in the large adoption of these tools.
Thank you so much. Hello to everybody. For who doesn't know me, I'm Vanessa. I'm a postdoc researcher. Connecting to what Paola was just mentioning, and maybe to going back to what Luca was mentioning earlier about learning to learn, which is, I have a feeling that one of the main challenges with the use of OpenAI or like these large language models is that I'm connecting to this philosopher, to John Dewey. He wrote a book about art as experience. And basically he says that to actually being able to experience an experience, to build an experience, you have to go through the whole process of it. So when you are reading a book, it's not about reading the first page and the last page. You have to go through the whole book, otherwise you are not building the experience of that book. And the experience is built page by page. The thing with these models is that you are kind of removing a little bit that part. Or at least it depends, obviously. This is generalizing. It depends on how you use it, obviously. So, and the issue with that is also connected to this critical thinking. Because building an experience is also, Dewey calls it an aesthetic of the experience, but not in the sense of something beautiful or something ugly. It's more connected to a balance between what you are doing and what you are perceiving. So I'm doing this, and this is taking me fatigue, but I'm learning. And I think that's one of the missions of university, learning. It's not only about, it's about building tools to understand reality. It's not just getting information out of the world. Because if it's a matter of information, that's beautiful. You have basically a huge open library to access any knowledge in the world because it's already there, and the tool helps you to select. But I believe that university should be also about building critical thinking. Okay, this is the information, what's my position around this? So that puts, I think, a dilemma there. So what should we do as a university or as institutions, educational institutions, In regard to ChatGPT, and like, are we teaching students to actually use it in a way that it's useful for them to actually be able to build their own experiences around learning and education?
No, because I've been advocating for the reintroduction of friction since 2017. And then I think we mentioned that in a number of, more friction means that you can go through processes. And next, so this was actually it's the basic question on all these questions. So if you don't do effort, you don't learn. This is a basic cognitive evidence, and the point is that we are taking away friction in every field of experience. So especially now in knowledge domain, and this is what you were saying. And so, what is the new friction that we are going to introduce when AI is a partner in how we build, again, as you were saying, I don't know how to introduce complexity, because this is the same question. This is about how we design the technologies, and again goes back to what Luna was saying before, and how we reintroduce ways to produce advantage for us in cognitive terms. And so I think this is the crucial point. You will see this thing go mainstream in the next. I already seen mentioned a number of times, and I always forward this to the team, say, okay, we said it like 6 years before that. But I see even a book by Mario Calabrese advocating for more effort in life. But because we are losing the sense of having like results, it's connected, it's strongly connected to education, how we can build systems that introduce the way of building identity of people that build identity through failure, through doing the wrong thing, mistakes, and then you come to me and say, no, this is wrong, we did the other way, and not having the perfect draft already made.
Well, I think that for the younger generations, friction is everywhere, but probably not in the places where you expect it to be. Okay, so the AI can help them take the friction out of where it's not needed, but it will not take the friction out of like many aspects of their lives. Okay, so it's there. Simply, it's not where we expect it. One thing that I know also is that the students give the best when they're challenged. When you give them a little bit of salt and pepper to what they do, exactly like everything that we say about design. Design works better when there's limitations. Okay, all designers know that when you have any kind of limits. And so giving students challenges is always a good idea, I think. AI is not meant to challenge you, AI is meant to serve you. Okay, so given these two elements, we need to balance that in all the activities that we give our students. And they could be like endless. It could be, as long as in the mix, from what I see, as long as you have these elements in the mix, it's fine, but it's a big challenge also for us, not just for the students.
Well, I think that the key aspect is not to switch the tool with the process. So to understand that you have a tool that can let you shift the process, especially when it is a creative process. We didn't show the video, but I think that if we can now, that's a good, to go on from the point it was before, it's fine. Because actually the way we tried to use different AI tools, because in creative industries we use both LM and diffusion models, is to try to apply and to pick, as Elena was saying, the best tool for each phase of the process in a way that you can get to the best results. Because letting the tool produce, so being driven by technology, the final result, and shifting the process is producing weaker result and impoverishing knowledge, as we were saying before. So, for example, in this case, we started from data from our archive, both physical and tangible data and digital information. Any type of data. We codified some key design principles that Gianfranco Ferré was using in his work. He was also codifying himself this process because he was an architect and also able to verbalize his process, so deconstructing and emphasizing. So there's a lot of also information related to natural language of Gianfranco Ferré. So then we passed to the students all this knowledge about the process of Gianfranco Ferré himself, digital and physical inputs, and so on and so forth. And then we went back in the process by using digital tools and soliciting students to work with different AI tools to explore the different dimensions of Gianfranco Ferré principles, design principle, by both working, and here started the experiment. So each design principle is explored through different AI tools to see the potential and the result, and then to merge them through their own work as well. So inputting also their own drawings and ideas. So there you see a little bit of the prompting. Of course, this is a video that gives the idea what happened, but finally understanding the potential of the tools working with humans in each phase of the process to then get to the final results. So in here, I don't know if it's friction, but certainly it is a process that needs a lot of work, that is not just telling the AI, please give me a garment that looks like Gianfranco Ferré garment, because that result, if you look at it from an expert domain, the result is really not convincing at all.
This is beautiful. I'm not sure it's fiction. I think it's more like the understanding of Gianfranco Ferré, so the breakdown of his skills, and I think the challenge would be here not to make like derivative work of Gianfranco Ferré by going through his breakdown of process, and the question would be how we can make another Gianfranco Ferré. Is it the right way to do that? Because Gianfranco Ferré came from this kind of education. But this is not for this panel because we need to go. So thank you all. Thank you. It was super nice to have you all. Thank you, Elena from Dubai. Enjoy the people.